Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Welcome to another virtual parlor chat. We're just going to give everybody about one more minute just to log on, and we'll start officially at 7 p.m. Alrighty, so I think we will get started and kick things off. So welcome to the Morris-Jumel Mansion's virtual parlor chat. This month, our title is The Making of Faces and Facades with our lovely artist, Andrea Arroyo. And in case you are new to the Morris-Jumel Mansion, a little background on the museum as a whole, some mansion history before we dive in. The mansion was built in 1765, and it is the oldest remaining house in Manhattan. So on the entire island of Manhattan, the mansion is the very first that is remaining. It is on the ancestral land of Lenape people, and we do believe that it was likely built, ran, and certainly funded using enslaved labor. It was used as Washington's headquarters in the fall of 1776, and it later housed Eliza Jumel, businesswoman extraordinaire, former Vice President Aaron Burr, and Anne Northup, whose husband Solomon Northup wrote 12 Years a Slave. And then just a few updates while you're here, if you're interested in some other mansion programming. On April 5th, 2025, we will have a lecture titled Poetic Justice by Margaret Oppenheimer, who wrote the biography of Eliza Jumel, The Remarkable Rise of Eliza Jumel. And we'll be celebrating Eliza's 250th birthday during that program, which will have some cake and bubbly included. So make sure you stop on by. It'll just be with the price of admission to the mansion for that day. On April 10th, we will have a lecture and food sampling called A Taste of the Past, and Northup and Melinda Russell. That will be with Rafia Zafar, who is a food historian, and she's written extensively about African-American cooks. She's just released a book about Melinda Russell, who was Anne Northup's contemporary, and we're going to dive into how their lives were similar and different, what Anne's life would have been like working at the Morris-Jumel Mansion, and how those recipes came to be, why some recipes stayed around, why some didn't, and get to taste some historic food. Then April 12th, it's going to be a very big day. We have our second annual egg hunt, so be sure to mark that down. Come on out for that. And it's also Family and Community Day, so that will be on the same day as the egg hunt this month. And they are making afikoman covers, since it is also the first night of Passover. And then if you like this virtual parlor chat, come on back down on April 16th. We've got another one, and that is going to be about our upcoming exhibition on the 260th anniversary of the mansion with our exhibit designer. And it'll be really exciting. And then finally, paranormal investigations, which are always a big hit. We have the last one for the season, since it's starting to stay lighter out for longer, not so much spooky anymore, but for Eliza's birthday, we're going to have a special investigation, see if she wants to celebrate her birthday with us. So that is what we have on the calendar. So now, in our virtual parlor chats, we love to have a back and forth conversation with you all. So be sure to use the Q&A feature in the webinar. So that way we can get your questions, and I will be able to read them to Andrea after the lecture. You can submit questions at any point, and we will have some time to talk about them at the end. So now, a little bit about Andrea, and then I will turn it over. And pardon me, I'm reading off paper. Andrea Arroyo is an award-winning artist who works in various media, including painting, site-specific installations, and public art. Ms. Arroyo has presented 60 individual and over 200 group exhibitions. Her work is collected internationally and is in the permanent collections of the Library of Congress, the National Museum of Mexican Art, the Richmond Museum, the Smithsonian Institute, and the New York Public Library, and many other institutions. She has received numerous recognitions, including the New York Women's Foundation Award, 2 fellowships from the New York Foundation for the Arts, the United Nations Lurie Award, Artist Employment Creative Rebuild New York Fellowship, Global Citizen Award Artist, Clinton Global Initiative, San Antonio de los Baños International Biennial Award, Hispanic Federation NOMA Google Art Award, and multiple grants from the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance, the Puffin Foundation, the Harlem Arts Alliance, the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone, the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council, and the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council. Additional honors include Heroes of the Pandemic, Official Artists of the Latin Grammy, Outstanding Woman of New York, Groundbreaking Latina in the Arts, and Outstanding Latina of the Year. Arroyo's book, Imaginations, Art as Solidarity, won the gold medal for Best Art Book at the International Latino Book Awards. Public art projects include permanent indoor and outdoor artwork for private, institutional, and corporate spaces, including the New York City subway and 2 public schools. Her artwork has been published extensively, including on the New Yorker's cover, the New York Times, The Nation, and Le Monde. It has also been the subject of over 200 features in the international media. So with that, I will turn it over to Andrea, who will be sharing about the making of her wonderful exhibit, Faces and Facades, with us.
Thank you, Danielle, for that introduction. And I'm looking forward to some of the programs at the mansion in April. That's exciting. Thank you also, Catherine, and the Morris-Jumel Mansion for having me. I'm super excited to be here. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. I cannot see you, but hopefully you can see me and my work, which is more important. I'm super excited to discuss my project, Faces and Facades, which is on view at the mansion, and it's been extended through May 25th. So come visit if you can. I will start by showing you a range of works. I work in a variety of media, so you just can have a sense of everything I do. But then on the second part, I'll be focusing more on the Faces and Facade project. So I'm going to share my screen right now. And let me just start just with a special thank you. Thank you to all of the funders and to the mansion, of course. This project was created in part during my fellowship with the Artist Employment Program from Creatives Rebuild New York, and it's also funded by UMES. So I'm going to show you a bunch of slides of works that I do. This piece is titled Eliza's House, and it was displayed during my first show at the museum. And it's mixed media, it's a repurposed vinyl, and it was incorporated to the balcony of the house. I love the house. I moved to the neighborhood about 16 years ago, and I consider the house like my house. I think it's all our house. And I love the history, I love the culture, I love every little detail. And it really connects me to the grounds, it connects me to the past and the present. So it's really beautiful. This second piece is titled Covida, homage to the victims of the pandemic. And during the height of the crisis of the pandemic, the museum was closed, of course, to the public. And I was commissioned to create a site-specific piece for the gates. So I created this piece and I titled it Covida, which is a combination of the words COVID and vida, which is life in Spanish. And I wanted to create a space for reflection and connection and where people could gather safely, and since it was outdoors, and just honor and commemorate, the people who were passing. The ribbons you see on the sides have the names of victims of the pandemic. This is the photo of the first day of installation. At the end of the installation, the ribbons were they were 500, 600 ribbons with different names. People were sending names of victims from around the world. So we were incorporating all of those ribbons throughout the duration of the installation. The next slide is, this is titled Eliza, and this was also in the grounds of the Morris-Jumel mansion. It's outside in the garden, is the tree that is right in front of the side entrance, and it's a magnolia tree. And again, paying homage to the women of the mansion and to women of the neighborhood as well. This is a combination of materials and is also repurposed mesh, and it was incorporated into the actual tree. So I call these kinds of works my collaboration with nature, even though the tree didn't voluntarily collaborate with me. I imagined that it was okay for the tree to host Eliza for a few weeks. This second piece is an installation that I created this past November, and it's titled Viva la Vida, and it's a site-specific piece that commemorates the Mexican Day of the Dead. It was an interactive piece, and people were encouraged to bring photographs and messages to their loved ones. Of course, Day of the Dead is a very important celebration in Mexico. It's a holiday that is it's just a very beautiful and very meaningful celebration. It's very deep in symbolism, and is part of every Mexican's life, as I remember. So some of us bring culture from our countries and share it with the world. So thank you, the mansion, for hosting this during Day of the Dead in November last year. This is another piece that I did for the mansion. It's a piece that is paper and mixed media that was incorporated into a Napoleonic clock base that is in the collection of the mansion. So for this particular show, I combined contemporary art with historic artifacts from the collection of the mansion. Of course, handling everything with extreme care and just thinking of archival methods, but also trying to bring back to life these artifacts that are centuries old, and bring the idea of the women who are in the mansion, around the mansion, and the women who gave life to what we know today as the museum. This other piece is not in the mansion, but it's a sister institution in the neighborhood. It's an exhibition called Imaginations, Art as Solidarity. And it's at the Hispanic Society Museum and Library on 155th Street. And it features large-scale banners and prints of works that were in homage and commemoration to human rights, social justice. Remember, this was also in display during the pandemic. So it was very, very important to me to create a space, another space for reflection where people could gather safely during those times and just, create community, even though the pandemic didn't allow us to get together in closed spaces. This is titled Goddesses at the Palace, and it's another sister institution, the United Palace Theater on 175th Street. It's a gorgeous theater and it's historical landmark. And they commissioned these large-scale installations for the Grand Foyer during the art stroll, the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance stroll. And it features a series of scrolls that are integrated with the architectural elements of this incredibly beautiful lobby. If you haven't been to the palace, I recommend you visit. It's just gorgeous. It's drop dead gorgeous, the lobby and the outside and inside the theater as well. So again, this is Goddesses at the Palace. As you can see, I do all of my work has to do with women. I do a lot of work that has to do with women from mythology and history, and also contemporary life. Something different. This is a piece that was commissioned for the flag project, and it was on view at Rockefeller Center Rink. And it was printed on a ginormous flag that was just flying on the wind during winter. And it was a collaboration with the Climate Museum and the United Nations Environment Program. This is a piece that is permanent, and it's permanent public art. It's titled Harmony, and it was commissioned by the MTA for a subway station. And this is just a detail of a series of 16 different faceted glass panels. This is on view on the platform, on the subway platform. And for me, it's really wonderful to go visit and see how people interact with the piece. It's outdoors and you can see it from both sides. So, and it's beautiful how it changes with different days, different times of day, different lights, when it's sunny, when it's cloudy. So really, really proud of this project, and proud that it's gonna be there permanently. This other piece is titled Nurture Nature, and it's a temporary mural commissioned by Art Bridge, and is on view at 5th Avenue and 112th Street. And this is a project that was beautifying some of the scaffolding that is around the city. And it's 400 square feet, and it's on view 24/7, of course. This piece is titled Women of the Forest, and it was commissioned by the New York Restoration Project, and it was a large-scale piece that was integrated with an English ivy wall in East Harlem. Unfortunately, it was a gorgeous English ivy wall, just ginormous, super tall. Unfortunately, it's not there anymore. The building had to remove it because it was damaging some of the wall. But I was very happy to be able to integrate my work into this natural environment. Again, I call this, an involuntary collaboration with the ivy. Something different. This is titled Music New York, and it was commissioned by the Latin Grammys. It was a piece that was used for the posters and all of the materials that are used in the Latin Grammy. They also created an exhibition, and it was sweet when I was watching the Grammys. They use it on the envelopes when they say "and the winner is," and so every time you see the envelope with the winner was that image. So it was a really sweet project. This is another one of the projects that are really close to my heart, and this is titled Earth Day, and it was commissioned by the New Yorker magazine, and it's a piece that is mixed media, and it's an homage to our earth, to nature, and just that sense of embracing nature every day, even though we live in a very urban environment. This is a picture of my book titled Imaginations, Art and Solidarity, and it's published by Now What Media. And as Danielle mentioned, it won the gold medal for Best Art Book in the International Book Awards. And that's a collection of images that are about social justice, including environment, race issues, women's issues, and everything has to do with human rights. And now we come to Faces and Facades. So this project is very sweet to me. I mean, it includes small and medium scale paintings. And in general, I create, as you saw in the previous slides, I create a lot of large scale and site specific works. And it really feels wonderful when I can focus on smaller pieces that can be completed in the studio or on site. So for me, it's an exercise in more intimate work. So it's really, really very sweet. I like to combine both large scale and more intimate scale projects when I work. So the project, believe it or not, started when I was in Paris, where I have been spending my summers. I travel a lot around the world, and I always bring my art supplies, and I spend a lot of time outside and painting. So I do a lot of what I call residencies, and just paint inspired by my surroundings. So when I'm in Paris, I spend a lot of time just outdoors, just looking at the sights and just enjoying, nature and the architecture everywhere. And this is a painting that I was actually working on site. And sometimes I take the pictures, and this was inspired by that fountain specifically. Um, and when I come back to the studio, I create, the final details for the works. I refine some of the drawings and the paintings, and I just complete, every piece in a way that is more manageable because I'm in the studio. I have more supplies, more materials. You can see in general, for these kinds of projects, I use just inks and watercolors and paper. So it's pretty straightforward and very sweet for me to be able to just sit on a table and work like that. Now, so this is my building, right? So when I came back from Paris the last time, of course, I live in my building, so I've been, looking at this for many, many years. And you can see the columns feature the fleur de lis, which is the symbol of France. So I walk a lot. I'm a walker. I walk every day. And during my walks, I have been taking pictures of many of the beautiful buildings in the area. So I'm going to show you a few of them. So, when I came back from Paris, I was looking at all of this and I said, wait, we have, gorgeous buildings and facades and architectural features in our neighborhood. Just sometimes I think we're too busy and we don't have the time to, pay attention that much. But in the warmer months, the streets of Washington Heights are, just filled with people. The photographs that I'm showing you, they feature no people because I was documenting for the project. But usually streets are super lively. You see families outside, children playing, people having kind of what I call urban picnics on the sidewalk. So it's really beautiful. And I know for a fact that women are always the ones who hold the community together, basically. They know everyone, they take care of, the gardens and the buildings, and they are kind of mothers to all of us. And I think they act like the glue that, hold us together as a community. So I really love that. You can see on these facades, all of the arches that I loved and I incorporate into my work. So this is a photograph of the first building when I moved to New York City from Mexico. I lived in this building and I love the facade. I love that shape. And you can see directly how I incorporated that shape into the watercolor that I was painting. That's a photograph of me painting on site in the neighborhood. And now going back to the mansion, as I love the mansion, I adore the mansion. Every time I go, I find a new detail that I didn't notice before. I fall in love with a different thing. So I created a whole series of sketches of little details in the facade, and it's so wonderful. It's the mansion is great art, and I think with great art you always see it with fresh eyes. I think that's one of the characteristics of great art. Just it makes you look in different ways all the time. So this is one of the paintings that is in the show. I'm gonna show you exactly which of the elements of the mansion I incorporated. So in this one, you can see the women, lines of women, and some straight lines and some curves. And in this slide, I can show you how I incorporated specific features, like the half moon, that is the window that is right on the facade of the mansion, and the pediment. So I take these lines and I incorporate them. I use them as a base basically for the watercolors. And then from those lines, I start creating and incorporating curves and women and shapes of women, and the shape of an arm, the shape of a face, the hair, and it all incorporates into that painting that is both organic and inorganic shapes. And one of the characteristics of this project for me is that it's the first time that I incorporate straight lines into my work, because I usually do mostly curved lines, a lot of arches, and just very flowy lines. So this gave me the opportunity to see, my paintings in a different way. It was a challenge because I don't usually like straight lines. I find them harsh. But what I wanted to do is soften those lines with the shapes and the ideas and the concept of a female form. Going back to the mansion, again, emphasizing the little details. These are photographs from the stained glass inside the mansion. And I love those little details. Like, you can look at them forever. I adore them. So I was making sketches, when I was there, and took some pictures. And I love the colors. I love the lines, and it's just I feel they're almost like jewels to the mansion. So I love them. So in this painting, which is the first one that I made for this particular show, you can see the diamond shape that I incorporated, and also the half moon and the pediment, the triangular pediment. And I created this other image where you can see, like, side to side, the diamonds, the one that I did as a sketch from the stained glass, and then the diamond that I incorporated into the painting. So that's a detail, and this is the painting, the whole painting. So again, for me, it's honoring both the mansion, the history of the mansion, and the women who have been in the mansion and around the mansion. This one again features the pediment shape and the arches that I love so much. On the next one, again, stained glass, those little details that I love. I recommend you spend time looking at them. You will fall in love with them if you haven't already. So a lot of my paintings, of course, incorporate these circular shapes. You can see on this very clearly the diamond shape and the round shapes of the stained glass. Again, I take those lines as a base, as a kind of a starting point. And from those, I create these, curves that become female forms, just these women that flow around or float, inside the painting, and are integrated and woven into the paintings. Again, this is something that I incorporate a lot of the arches from the architecture around the neighborhood. Again, give me a curve or an arch, and I will, create a female form out of it. This is just, I love it. I cannot, stop myself from doing it. This is a church that is in the neighborhood. It's in southern Washington Heights. And I love the lines. That shape is so beautiful. And again, speaking of Paris and how, people from around the world, they go to Paris and they are in awe of this, beautiful architecture, and we have so much of it right here. So, this project gave me a chance to fall in love with my neighborhood again and again. So I love this, and I take the picture and I create drawings that are kind of synthesized versions of these shapes, and then I incorporate them into the paintings. You can see, the shapes, the pointy arches, and women that kind of emerge from those arches in a way that is kind of very organic, very flowy. And I think is the way we kind of live. Like we live in houses, but we are, beings that move, that flow, especially women, right? We many times have to go with the flow, and we have to be flexible and malleable, and we are resourceful. So I feel like we navigate and flow through life. Again, more of the architectural elements that I found in a neighborhood. I love the colors. Some of these pediments were originally, I'm sure, colors that were more neutral, but I find, some of these are bright pink, some of those are, turquoise, and some of them are just red. So I love how people make their own version of these classic, architectural features, and I think it gives the neighborhood a very lively feel. Another piece in the show, I think this is also inspired by some of the iron works that are around the neighborhood, some of the gates, even some of the fire escapes. Some of them are really beautiful. The gates, the doorways. And sometimes it's they seem like hidden elements. I don't think they are meant to be hidden. I think that we just, we're just so busy we don't notice them sometimes. So, I find a lot of little treasures when I walk around. Again, more sketches from paintings from buildings in the neighborhood. The ones at the bottom are basically ironwork, gates, fences, window guards, things like that, and some columns. I love synthesizing the elements, like looking at something whole and then making, a few lines, just my own interpretation in a few lines. Just using part of it is the inspiration, part of it is imagination. Again, this incorporates some of those arches. You can see probably 10, 15 different arches in this painting. And most of them, the line becomes, the waist or the side of a female shape. I also want to mention that I am self-taught in the visual arts. I was trained as a dancer. I was a professional contemporary dancer. I came to New York City from Mexico on scholarship to study with avant-garde choreographer Mark Cunningham in his studio. And I had a life as a dancer before I became a visual artist. So you can clearly see how dance was and is still my first love. And it's always incorporated into my work. And that's also maybe why some of, why I have such a difficult or had such a difficult time incorporating straight lines into my paintings. This is a shot of myself just painting on site. You can see some of the process. The watercolor is still, the early stages. I do a lot of shading, a lot of layers and layers of watercolors to obtain that very, very rich and saturated finish for the final piece. This is again incorporating some of the arches, some of the domes, the cupolas, some of the Gothic elements in the architecture in Washington Heights. And this is how the show looks. If you have a visit, please come visit. It's a very intimate show, and I love the opportunity to have my work there. I love the house. And I also wanted to show some of my process. So in the show, you can see some of my tools, even some of my travel watercolor kit, some of my travel brushes. And I also display some of the photographs of the actual buildings in the neighborhood. It was very sweet. It has been very sweet during the events, the in-person events, how some people recognize their buildings, and that's also very, very sweet. So you can see some of the proofs, the sketches, the art supplies, and I love sharing that with people. Again, this is a close-up of those things. You can see the boxes in the center are my travel boxes. So I don't need a lot of supplies to travel. And I always say, have art supplies will travel. So yeah, I enjoy it very much. Um, Again, this is one of the cases that is displayed with some of the photographs from the buildings and some of the preparatory drawings and sketches that you can see. And lastly, I wanted to share, I also do collaborations with musicians. I have been doing that for a while during my events. This photo is with jazz legend, the beautiful Miss Marjorie Elliott from Harlem. And this was during one of my exhibitions in the neighborhood. And she plays the piano and I paint what she's painting. So it's kind of like an open collaboration, work in progress. It's not really a performance, it's more of an open invitation to the creative process that we open to the public. I do this very seldom, but I love doing them. Last month at the mansion, we're going to have Miss Marjorie played, but she had to cancel. But I had the opportunity to collaborate with beautiful pianist Just Ogiste, and we had a live painting event at the mansion for Women's History Month. And this is the scroll that I created during that time. So I think that's it for now. I think, yeah, well, this is some of the um, reviews. This was published in Italy. It's about the exhibition Faces and Facades. This is the Amsterdam News, also featuring the show. And this is the latest one, and it was published in the Manhattan Times. All of them are available online if you are interested. And I think that's it for now. Just coming off some international exhibitions. I'm gonna have a show in Istanbul, Turkey from April 24th to May 25th. And then I'm gonna have another show in Saint-Just-le Martel in France in September and October. So thank you for listening, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions and to make it a conversation. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very grateful for your presence. So thank you. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Amazing. Thank you, Andrea. So like Andrea said, we will now be moving to our Q&A portion of the evening. And we already have a question in the chat, which is lovely. So make sure you pop some other ones in there as well. But this first one is a question, I think, about the beginning of your presentation. It says, are you inspired by our current political and social climate to create any new work on the theme of social justice?
Absolutely. So I am more than inspired. I am driven, really driven to create work that impacts change. So I have been using my work for many, many years as a tool for social change. I do believe firmly that art can change the world, even if it changes, one heart. I think art connects us in a way that is very meaningful. I think sometimes political discourse or even talking, we tend to have our own walls, our own limitations. But art, I think, brings down those walls and allows us to connect in a more in a deeper level, and it connects, the humanity in each one of us. So absolutely, I have this project, Imaginations, Art of Solidarity, that is ongoing and that I continue to do. Again, I believe that art can change the world for sure.
That's lovely. Our next question is, do you have a particular favorite medium that you like to work in?
I do sometimes. So as you saw in my presentation, I do a range of different work. I am, the fact that I am self-taught in the visual arts, I think has given me a lot of freedom to try and test different things. So I am kind of an adventurous artist in the sense of trying different things, mixing different things together. And right now, when I do intimate work, I love watercolor. I love how intimate it is. But when I do large scale work, I use recycled or repurposed materials. I use materials that I don't even know what they are because they sometimes they're given to me and I just try them. So it depends on the project.
Awesome. The next question is, what are you showing in Turkey? So if you're able to give us a little insight into what your new exhibition abroad is.
So for my show in Turkey, that by the way is going to be in another historical setting. It's a historic old synagogue that was converted into a gallery. So it's a gorgeous setting. And I'm going to be showing the series from Imaginations, Arts and Solidarity. So I was invited by one of the artists and the director of the center to show this work that is very, very political, is very socially engaged, and that I hope will bring, people together, that will foster a conversation and will allow us to talk about issues that are important to all of us at the local level, at the international level. And right now, the world is going through, some kind of turmoil. We're in times of transition, I think, everywhere. And I think art gives us a chance to engage and to have a conversation about issues that are sometimes difficult, but that we need to talk about. So I am very, very happy for that opportunity. And then in France, I'm going to show again the series Imaginations, a different selection, of course. And that's going to be in September and October. And the other thing about that particular series for me is that there are works on paper that are created digitally and then printed. So that gives me a chance to travel with them. It's just easier to get, a larger audience. And it's also another media that I can explore, drawing digitally on an iPad. That I love doing that. Is very, very different from doing what I call handmade or more traditional work. But it's a wonderful thing to be able to use both, the classic media like oil paints and watercolors, and then move to site-specific installation and then to digital. I love doing that. It's challenging, but it's very exciting.
Awesome. This one, I guess this is a really great transition into this next question. Someone asked, can you share more about your supplies? Do you always use a certain brand of paint, or do you make your own paint? What happens if you buy a color and you don't like it when you finish a work? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And I love when people ask, the little details. For brands, I tend to switch brands. I tend to try different things. When I paint, for example, if I'm painting acrylics, I will buy different brands to test the colors because the colors are not the same, even though it's labeled the same in different brands. So I tend to switch around. I use a lot of golden, but for watercolors I use more of the Holbein and the more traditional ones. But I like to test a lot, so I usually buy a tiny amount of whatever it is that I want to test, and I do a bunch of color tests and see what I like. And then yes, sometimes we paint something and we don't like the color. That's true. I tend to what I try to do not to go crazy is to leave it alone for a little bit, let it rest, and then revisit and see if I really don't like it. If I need to change it, I will change it because I cannot live with a painting that I don't like. It's just if it doesn't work, it doesn't work for me. So I will change it, and I will sometimes even start from scratch. Because if it's just not satisfactory, I just won't show it. So it doesn't work. So it's exhausting and it's not fun, but it's part of the process. I tend to do pencil sketches and then a color sketch that is very rough. And then that I use that as a guide. But then, once you're painting, even if I figure that, that section is certain kind of yellow, when I'm painting, it just doesn't work. The scale might not work. The shade is just, sometimes paintings talk to you rather than you talking to the paintings. So it's trial. And when I need to change something, I just do. It's exhausting, but thank you for the question. Yeah.
Awesome. This next question says, many thanks, Andrea, for your presentation. I enjoyed learning about your process. Your art conveys so much grace and kindness. In your political work, do you ever convey anger?
Well, very seldom. I tend not to dwell on anger. Anger for me is something that I don't have the luxury of dwelling into. I think for many of us, anger is not conducive to survival. I need optimism. I do have rage, and I have just natural feelings. But for me, it's not very productive. Anger is not very productive. I tend to do work that inspires. Sometimes I say that my work does not focus on pointing out what's wrong, because I think we already know what's wrong. So I focus on creating or inspiring solutions, or inspiring the hope of a solution. So I call my art practice, especially my political work, a practice of hope in action. So, complaining for me is not activism. Anger for me has to be a temporary feeling that leads to something constructive. So I tend to not portray anger because for me it's not productive. For some other artists it is, and it's effective. It's just I tend to move better, and you know on things that are conducive to creating solutions.
That's a great sentiment. I feel like that, go towards where you feel like it's productive. The next question is, do you have a favorite piece or show that you've ever done?
I get this question a lot, and it's interesting because I always say, my favorite show is the one that I have on right now. So right now I'm in love with my show at the Morris-Jumel mansion. What happens, I think for me, is that I have to fall in love with my own work in order to finish it, right? So I have to get really engaged and really involved, and I get so invested. So there's a lot of love that is pour into these paintings. So right now I'm gonna say is Faces and Facades, also because it gave me the opportunity to work smaller, to work in different sites, and it also connected my travels to my life here in the city. And I love that idea of just working small, for now. But I'm gonna fall in love with my next project next month. So thank you for asking that.
This next question is, I love the fact that you are constantly falling in love with the neighborhood and finding inspiration, for you in the buildings that we pass, but don't see every day. So like the little features that were missing. Could you repeat the periodicals that have covered your exhibit at MJM? So that was a comment and a question wrapped in one.
So yeah, so I think the reviews for she's asking about the reviews, right, of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Amsterdam News, the Manhattan Times, and the Funny Blog in Italy. And I think those are all linked in the Morris-Jumel Mansion website. In the show, they are links to all of those articles.
Alrighty. So the next question is, have you ever had an instance where an outdoor piece needs to be retouched due to weather?
I have not. You know, all of the work that I've done outside, the temporary work uses very, very malleable, very materials that are very sturdy. So I haven't. And even, I mean, I think with the COVID piece at the mansion at the gate during the pandemic, we had a huge storm. Like it was a historical, the winds were just terrible, and we knew it before, so we actually covered it with a tarp because we were just concerned about the wind. But never. And another thing that is very sweet is to share that I never, crossing fingers, I have never had any piece vandalized. And that's something very sweet because with public art, that's always a risk. It's part of what we know could happen. The most that I got was a similar piece to the tree piece that I showed at the beginning of the presentation. That is a woman that is integrated in a magnolia tree. And it was a piece that was similar, that was displayed in a garden. And somebody actually wrote in little pieces of paper, laminated quotes from the Bible. And they were matching the colors of the piece. And this person pinned those, quotes to the bottom of the tree, like very mindfully. So it wasn't vandalized. It was, I guess, I don't know, intervened somehow. So it was interesting, strange, but always super interesting how people engage with the work and how somebody took the time, like they looked at the piece, went to the garden, went home, created this thing, went back. So I think it's so public art is always beautiful, even though it's sometimes challenging. It's beautiful how people engage.
Awesome. So this question is, do you mainly work on one piece or collection at a time, or do you work on multiple things at once?
I work on multiple things at once. I actually tend to work in series. So let's say when I'm focusing on faces and facades, my studio is all full of the faces and facade watercolors. But at the same time, I'm doing some of the digital work on the iPad. And also what I do when I'm usually when I'm working on one project, I have, a sense of when, the deadline for the show and when I'm going to show it. And then I have already another show planned for a couple of months or even a year, after. So I'm already working on the concepts for the next show. So, and in terms of pieces, I do work on several pieces at a time. I think for myself, for my own kind of sanity, it's good to work on one small piece, work on one specific piece, and then leave it alone for a few hours, a few days, and then come back and just move around the studio because it also gives me the chance to look at things with fresh eyes. Sometimes I tend to, obsess with something. So let's say if I'm working on a painting that, it's, a certain kind of, shades of blue, I'm obsessed with those blues. And then, it's good to just, look at something else and then come back and revisit the piece.
Awesome. And then this question is, where will your works go once the show at the mansion closes?
So some of these works will be part of private collections, and sometimes I show them in additional shows and group shows. But in theory, and that's what happens usually when I show, they become part of different collections.
Awesome. And so we are just about reaching the end point. So if you haven't popped a question into the Q&A, go ahead and do that now, folks. Oh, this one's a fun one. Can you describe your perfect day as an artist?
Oh, perfect day. Geez, it has to be sunny because my studio has 6 windows, so I love it when it's super, the light is beautiful. It's a day where I am in the studio listening to music and just flowing. It doesn't have to be, the ideal day is when I'm focused on the process, not on the end product, not on the deadline, not even the concept, but on the process itself. When I have, my paints and my supplies and everything is flowing and it's just makes it easy. I also, my windows look outside, so I have, the chance to, look at the sky, look at the trees. So, that gives me just this sense of connection, even though I work in isolation in my studio. It allows me the chance to connect. I see people walking outside on the street, like, I look down and it's just lovely. Yeah, but it really changes. Sometimes an ideal day is when I'm traveling, if I'm somewhere in a little town in Vietnam or Cambodia or Mexico or even in Paris, and I have, a little bag with my art supplies and I can sit somewhere and order a glass of wine and just sit down and paint for like 3 hours.
That sounds lovely. So we are reaching the end, so I think we will be wrapping up now. Thank you, Andrea, for sharing your work with us for Faces and Facades and for this virtual parlor chat. Folks, if you joined us late, we will be posting this on YouTube just as soon as I'm able to get that uploaded. That will be on our YouTube channel, which you can find on our website at morris-jumel.org. And my name's Danielle. Thank you so much for coming tonight. And have a great rest of your evening, folks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. And come visit the mansion. It's beautiful.
Thanks, folks. Have a good night.